Welcome to Next Build 2020. I'm Chris Ruffo. I'm the segment lead for Architecture and Engineering in Lenovo Workstation Group. I think what I appreciate most about Next Build and what Martin and the team at AEC Magazine is doing is they've created a really robust dialogue about technology and how it links to practice for what's next with BIM. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the things that we're tracking in terms of trends, and they track very closely to what's being presented at Next Build. Scott's going to join and talk a little bit about what we're hearing from users like you. And then Mike's going to drive it home and talk about how we're taking all of this feedback, what we're tracking, what we're learning, and putting it into our portfolio solutions. So I think one of the biggest trends we've all been tracking is mobility is the new norm. I think the work from home mandate has impacted all of us across the entire practice. And we're seeing an increased demand for mobile workstations. People want thinner, faster, lighter mobile workstations. They want more powerful GPU capabilities. And we're seeing a number of users are really exploring what it means to tie their mobile workstation to either a rack workstation or a desktop workstation back in the office, because IP and security is extremely important. We're looking at a number of scenarios between one-to-one and one-to-many connections between a mobile workstation and a server back in the office. I think the next trend, and in fact, it's really an interesting conversation this year, is around the convergence of manufacturing and building, how those two are connecting. And there are a number of great presentations, from Molly's session to Bruce's to Tal's, which is running in our segment here. I think 2 years ago, Hedwig Heisman from Deuce and Actual came out, and they presented how that they are building products at an industrial scale, fabricating them in a sustainable and circular manner. And we see this as being probably the most interesting trend in the industry moving forward. Virtual communication is also extremely important. This covers everything from visualization to rendering in real time. Let's talk about a couple of examples. What we see here, we've had an ongoing partnership with Vario, and when you see this technology demoed live, it's fascinating, because what they're able to do is combine a virtual reality experience with a mixed reality experience. So what you're seeing here in the video is a user with the headset on. You can actually see through, because you can see the camera, see your hand. The space is real. The car is fabricated. And both are presented in such a lifelike manner that it's really easy to make very, very informed design decisions through this virtual environment in a manner that simply wasn't possible even 2 years ago. Visualization is in real time. Last year, Carlos from Neoscape presented a fabulous presentation. He showed us the latest of what's possible with NVIDIA RTX graphics in one of our mobile workstations and a desktop workstation. So what you're seeing here is actually being rendered out in real time in the Unreal Engine. And I think what this means for all of us is that real design decisions can be made in the boardroom in a presentation with a client, rather than having to round trip back to the office to the render farm to get a decision made. And I think we'll see in other sessions, like Ken Pimentel's session from Epic Games, that it's not just about pretty pictures and real-time rendering. Visualization is becoming a critical part of the design process itself. So last but not least is a trend that's tying all of these things together. If you remember 2 years ago, we had Gijs van der Velden from MX3D come out and present about the world's first 3D printed bridge. The bridge is finished now. It's really exciting. I spoke to Gijs last week. The bridge is done. It's ready to be installed, hopefully later in the month. They've got all their planning permissions, all checks are go. So fingers crossed the bridge will be installed later in the month. But the exciting part of the story is the next chapter is that the bridge has been outfitted with a sensor network, almost like an IoT nervous system. So cameras, displacement sensors, accelerometers, weather sensors. So we'll be able to track the bridge in real time as almost like a living organism, and we'll be able to understand how the bridge is performing in real time versus its design spec. It'll understand the environment in which it's in, and all this data is going to be captured through sensors and be able to analyze through machine learning algorithms and various AI implementations. So it's going to be an exciting couple of years as we get to learn from this data that's being captured. So see, these are some of the high level trends that we've been tracking. It's important to us because it really informs the portfolio that we're building. And I'm going to pass it over to Scott here, who's going to talk to you a little bit about some of the data that we've been collecting and what you've been saying as users.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate being here. It is just amazing year after year to see how this industry continues to push the technology and improve the way that we all work, whether it be our partners or our end users. So I'm glad to be a part of it. Of course, would much rather be a part of it in person, but we all understand the challenges there, and I applaud the team that's put together a really amazing digital session. So I'm excited about this as well as our Q&A discussions later. As Chris mentioned, I'm Scott Ruppert. My role within Lenovo is the workstation portfolio planner. So that means I get to work on what's coming next in our workstation portfolio, product focused, but really the core of my job is understanding these trends that Chris just went through, where those intersect what our partners are doing, CPU and GPU and these advances in the core technology, and how we integrate that into the workstations that you all use. And so, of course, more important than any of that would be the feedback that we get from the actual end users, from folks like yourselves. How are you using these products? How do you need these tools to get your job done? And how can we make them better? I would say, looking back over the past several years, there's lots of examples of where we have brought products to life based on user feedback. One example you're probably familiar with, the P52 was the first mobile workstation to be VR ready to support a VR experience from a mobile product. And then its follow on, the P53 was the first to bring Quadro 5000 class of graphics into that 15-inch mobile workstation. Again, increased performance and increasing mobility. So I know that's a trend we've been talking about for quite a while, and we keep trying to push that forward. The ThinkPad P1, another great example of that. While we weren't necessarily first to market with that product, we went through several iterations based on user feedback and based on improving the reliability of it and the robustness, the mil-spec testing, all those things that we love to talk about. Again, all those things find their root in end user feedback, whether it be the smallest workstation, the tiny, to bring a Threadripper Pro to a workstation, right? All of that started with conversations with end users. Now, I will say, of course, this year has made that more challenging. And I do hope that we can have some of these conversations in person. I look forward to the Q&A session. But we are supplementing that as best we can through, smaller virtual conversations, sessions like this, as well as surveys online and otherwise gathering data. And then in this year, with the challenges of the pandemic and this quick pivot to working from home and a little bit of unknown about what going back to the office might or might not look like in the future, we have added another layer of complexity to it, if you will. And so we've tried to capture data about that as well. And we're using some of that information to inform the product portfolio. So all of the trends that Chris was talking about, plus this, maybe shift in how we're working today, this year, next year. And then how does that also inform the solutions that we're focusing on that Mike's going to talk about here in a couple of minutes. So I have several surveys, quite a bit of data. I've sort of netted it out, a few graphs here to share. A couple of the areas I don't think you'll be surprised by. Connectivity, of course, was one of the biggest ones. Everybody got home. There's plenty of stories about people that took desktop workstations home and didn't realize they couldn't connect to the internet. There's plenty of stories about folks that took 100 meters of Ethernet cable home and ran it, from their router down to their kitchen table, and fun things like that. But to enhance the data and to really get a feel for what was going on, we added one open-ended question in there that just said, what has been your biggest challenge this year? What has surprised you, or maybe what's kept you up at night? And I will say this has gone to a variety of different industries, different workstation end users, but a lot of these themes are the same, and I think they'll resonate, right? Is the quality of my work being displayed remotely when I'm doing these kind of digital presentations? Are my teams as productive as they should be? Very specific things like full resolution desktop. Security, of course, is top of mind. VPNs, and all of these things. Mapping that to some of these other trends like moving to mobile, right? Did my team have mobile workstations? Could I send them home? Sometimes the workstation can't leave the building, and other times the hardware maybe can, but the data set, the IP, the project proper, the content cannot. So do we have the right remote solutions in place, right? And so those are all areas that we want to help with. Those are all areas that we want to gather data on and continue the conversation. And so, with that as a backdrop, before I hand it off to Mike, I will say, this is near and dear to my heart, of course. So I love to continue the conversation. I'd love to gather some more data. We'll try all the different forms of technology that we have. I think an easy question for the audience, you can stew on this, and we can talk about it in the Q&A. Is when have you returned to the office? Are you returning to the office soon? Are you never returning to the office? Is the productivity such that it makes more sense to stay home? I have talked to folks that fit in all those categories. I can tell you, us at Lenovo here in our office, we're not going back till at least January. And so we're continuing to adapt and rethinking what the rest of this year looks like and heading into next spring. And then I would like to make the survey available to all of you. I would love to hear your voice in this. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it off to my friend Mike Leach, our solutions manager, and we can pivot with that as a backdrop to, again, back to more about how you work and how are you using these tools that we create to be the most productive. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Scott. Appreciate your time. And again, welcome everybody to Next Build 2020. So different time, different format, but I welcome everybody. Hope you found the event useful so far. Some really great speakers this year. So looking forward to seeing more of the event. So as I've discussed, I've spoken before at Next Build. My role within the Lenovo is a solution portfolio manager. So it's my role to look at the convergence of technology that the likes of Chris can see within the AEC and the architecture engineering world, and see how that converges with some of the key technology trends that we see, to ultimately help build out not just physical products but total solutions of how these can then help you be more productive no matter what the old or new normal may be. So I just wanted to share a couple of slides just to kind of see, well, this is how, this is what's ultimately changing in the world today. We've taken initially, this workforce agility. We're seeing now, a massive 62% of employees, they still remain in sort of a work from home environment. People pivoted very quickly to ultimately what was a new norm, and that will ultimately sort of map out and start to become this new trend moving forward. But things like security, there's been a 300% increase in cybersecurity since the pandemic at the start of the year, and ultimately now industries have to act a little bit differently. They need this workforce mobility, this digital transformation. They've almost needed to spin up their own disaster recovery plan when there ultimately may have not been a plan there in the first place. So taking our traditional products, we've had a very good portfolio of ThinkStation and ThinkPad mobile workstations. Pairing those with some of our ThinkVision monitors and some of the standard Think accessories, everything from docking stations, presenting tools, mice, keyboards, and we've been able to sort of equip that new home, home worker with everything they need, but still allowing IT management to have full control over that device. So that might be remote security, that might be remote management, physical updates, our ThinkShield security wrapper that connects all of those, dovetailing very well into the ThinkPad P series with remote diagnostics, workstation diagnostics, and the Lenovo Performance Tuner. We've made sure that no matter what the firm or practice may be running, any application, any workflow, they've got the ability now to connect straight into that at maximum speed. So in the convergences we see from a manufacturing to a building environment, those applications which now are driven by high clock speeds, high core counts, or high GPU, there's now very limited drop in productivity as we've seen more and more people start and utilize these. We've then seen, the transition then to kind of that remote workstation. So equipping every home worker with a powerful high performance workstation like our ThinkPad P53 or the new ThinkPad P15, might not be feasible for everybody. So we've invested heavily in a complete remote workstation solution, an end-to-end platform that takes those desktop workstations or even our new rack-mounted workstation that can still be physically located in the office, and then provide that with a true 256-bit encrypted platform where the user can access that workstation from any location over Wi-Fi, 4G, 5G, internet, from anywhere else in the world. So the problems that Scott mentioned around security, data set sizes, maybe IP not being able to go home, or you're now obviously working with globally dispersed workforces of people maybe head home or head to work from different locations. You now centralize that performance, you centralize that workstation estate within the office or within the data center. And your users can now have complete access to that in a very fast environment, which has typically before never been possible. So when you access remote, people have used things like RDP from Microsoft. You find that the workstation itself is quite clunky. There's lots of latency. There's lots of reduced performance. And as we see now, using the technology we have, we're working with Mechdyne Corporation on their TGX remote workstation software. This delivers an NVIDIA GPU accelerated experience end to end. So regardless of what client device you have, bring or choose your own device strategy for your users. You can use your NVIDIA powered workstations that are located back in the office and connect to those in an as local like experience. So when I say as local, what I mean is the user doesn't appreciate that they're using a remote workstation. So the performance is just like they're sat in front of that platform. They log in like they would do from their normal laptop or desktop, but they're actually connecting through to high performance, powerful hardware located in a different location. The mouse to keyboard interactions are seamless. You can run 3D connection, motion controllers, and space mice. You can run touch screen navigation. It's a very, very easy way to power that remote hardware. And then you can share and split that resource out to collaborate with other users. So in the old norm, where you maybe go into a centralized meeting room and collaborate over a single project, either projected BIM model onto a large LCD display, you can now join a Teams call, but in a separate window, you can each log into that workstation and take control of that 3D architecture software. You can mark up and make real-time changes, maintaining maximum performance, maximum efficiency, throughout that entire project. So the remote workstation in collaboration with our workforce agility solutions really now give you that the ability to turn on a knife edge. So no matter what the future or new norm may be for your architectural practice, you have that solution there to back that up. And one of the sort of the additions to that will be sort of immersive solutions. So back to scalability. You want immersive visualization, VR, 3D rendering, real-time graphics like we've seen from NVIDIA RTX. It's now start to having that collaboration experience in not just the physical world, but in the virtual environment as well. So working closely with Vario, we do have now the world's only true 2020 eye tracking, human eye resolution, professional VR and XR solution. So we've taken our ThinkStation or our ThinkPad mobile workstations, and we've supplied those then with the Vario, the VR2 Pro or their new XR1 augmented reality display. To give you now that ability to have a much quicker project time to market, and collaboration experience. So you don't have to stop production workflow to sort of move in and out of 2D, 3D, or VR environments. You can now put the headset on and you can immersely then track and obviously start to work in a very much collaborative environment. But it's at human eye resolution. It's at the much higher field of view, the much higher pixel quality itself. So you can do things like read text and see finite sort of product details, stitching within fabrics, photorealism, and that sort of thing. So it's moving the sort of the commercialized consumer VR technology into the true enterprise space. And we've obviously got plug and play solutions on the desktop and mobile workstation side to help fully support that. And we're looking forward, most importantly, to see where this can go and how more of a remote collaboration experience, be it in virtual or mixed reality, workforce agility, and remote workstations, can now kind of bring that new hardware pipeline in that can be the new norm and the foundation for all architectural practices as we move forward this year. So I want to say thank you everybody for their time. We've got some really great questions and a good Q&A, live Q&A session coming. So really welcome the feedback and to interact with you on here. So on behalf of myself and Scott and Chris Ruffo, thank you for watching.